up, everyone? Welcome back to the Raw Prospect Podcast. My name is Emmy Nixon. Hope you're having a great day. This is episode 80. Today is October the 23rd. And joining me from right next to me today, the Stat King himself, Michael Ween. What is up?
What is up? Our first in-person episode in at least 2 years. What a day this is. It's a historical day, episode 80. Today, it's going to be an NFL Week 7 picks day. We have 11 games to go through. Sort of a light slate, if you ask me. Not a whole lot of huge games, but we're still going to give you our picks. And then that's going to be all for today. And we'll have more content coming for y'all this next week. I'm hoping that at least I or both of us get to do a World Series preview.
Right.
And then we'll, of course, have our Week 8 picks sometime next week, likely on Wednesday. And then if you haven't already, I started my San Antonio Spurs mini-series on Thursday or Friday. That is up now. So go check out the first episode of that. And I'll be back doing that on Monday night as well. So lots of content coming for y'all.
Right.
So just keep an eye out. Make sure to like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star rating and review if you do choose so. If you like our content.
Yeah.
But if not, we appreciate all of you. So
yeah, I don't know why you're still here if you don't like our content.
Yeah.
So yeah,
if you don't like sports, then
just do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get into this.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So
I have the first game. By the way, we should mention before we get into this. Overall record on the season, Emmy, 44 wins, 57 losses. Myself, 48 wins, 53 losses. However, it's a long season, and we're both 1-0 on the week.
Right.
We both picked Denver Broncos plus 3.5 to cover against the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland, and they did. So good for them.
Right.
But our first game, for the sake of this episode, we have the Atlanta Falcons minus 2.5 at the Miami Dolphins. A matchup of 1-5 squads.
Yeah. Yeah, this game is interesting because you have the Falcons who are coming off of a bye week and a game where they won against another 1-5 team, the New York Jets. And they didn't look particularly great in that game either, but they did get out to an early lead and they were able to keep that lead, which is a good sign for the Falcons, because that's not something they typically do. But in terms of this game, I think Miami is going to have a bounce back game, especially defensively. I liked how Tua looked last game, and I think he looked sharp. Besides from one throw he had where he threw that pick, everything else was pretty good. So I just think Miami, if you're like in that locker room, I think they still believe in their chance to save the season, but it has to start now and they have to get it done now. So I'm going to pick Miami to cover and win this game.
Okay. Has anybody had a more disappointing start to the season than the Miami Dolphins? I think you can make the argument they've been the most disappointing. First of all, they're allowing 29.2 points per game. That's second to last in the NFL. Last week in London, they blew a 10-point lead to a Jacksonville Jaguars team that came into that game having lost 20 games in a row. And they just haven't found any sort of consistency offensively. Now, there have been rumors. The trade deadline is nearing in about a week and a half. There have been rumors. They are in talks with the Houston Texans for Deshaun Watson. However, they traded their first-round pick for this year, so I'm not sure how that's going to all work out, but they're one of the main teams that's been consistent in calling the Texans, and they're trying to get a deal done before the November 2nd trade deadline. So if a deal comes through, either now on the podcast, which is unlikely, or in the future, we'll definitely be on talking about that. But anyways, get to the point. I agree with you. I think the Dolphins are going to have a bounce back week. Excuse me. The Falcons, while I'm wrong, they won 2 out of 3 before their bye week last week. So I think they're 2-3 actually, instead of 1-5. I apologize for any Falcons fans out there. But I can't bet on the Falcons as a road favorite. I have to go with the Dolphins, especially considering the Falcons are last in Football Outsiders defensive efficiency metric. So look, I've picked the Dolphins. I was high on the Dolphins coming in. They've proven me wrong, but hopefully this is their season, and they have to get a win here.
Right. This is like, if they lose this game, it's done.
So we're both taking the Miami Dolphins to recover this week.
Right. And one more thing I'll say is the Dolphins defense last year, they were very reliant on getting turnovers. They gave up like a bunch of yards, and their coverage was pretty decent, but a lot of times they were getting fumble recoveries, they were getting different things like that. And a lot of varying opinions were there for the Dolphins coming into the season, and they predicted that maybe the Dolphins would take a step back because they were so reliant on the turnovers. And now this year, now that they're not getting those turnovers, their defense has just not been nearly as proficient. So we'll see what happens this game. I think they'll bounce back, but it just hasn't been good at all.
Okay, so moving on. Our next game, we have the struggling Carolina Panthers -2.5 at the New York Giants, another struggling team. So what do you think?
Well, Sam Darnold is going to decide who wins this game, because I think Carolina has the better roster by far. They have a solid weapon group. Without Christian McCaffrey, is not as good, but I still like David Moore. I like Robbie Anderson. But it all just falls on Sam Darnold. Over the last 2 weeks, his adjusted yards per attempt has been 4.6, I believe. And that's from Brett Coleman. And in the weeks prior to that, I believe in the first 2 weeks, it was over 9. And then the Cowboys game, it was 8.6. So it was solid the first 3 weeks. And then the last 2, he's kind of taken a large step back. And you can say that maybe it's these playing better defenses, but it just been visibly very different with the quality of that accuracy and the decision making. So if he can bounce back, I think the Panthers will win and cover. But if he doesn't, then it's hard to really count on them to cover here. So I'm gonna pick the Giants to cover, but I don't think the Giants will win, but I will pick them to cover because I don't know what to think of Sam Darnold right now.
Okay, that's fair. That's definitely fair. I'm actually going to go with the Panthers to win this game, and I will tell you why right now. First of all, the Giants are banged up, dealing with a lot of injuries. I can't tell you the exact people that are out, but I know a lot of people are dealing with injuries, especially in that receiving core.
Right.
So that's not good. Second of all, the Giants have really yet to play, even though they did win a game, they've really yet to play a complete game this season. The game that they did win against the Saints, they were down by 11 going into the fourth quarter. So it's really been inconsistent team overall. The Panthers defense, while we know it's sort of taking a step back, come back to earth a little bit since the first couple weeks of the season, they still rank first in pass rush win rate. The Giants offensive line ranks 27th in pass block win rate. So I like the matchup there. And you can say Sam Darnold hasn't played great, over the past couple weeks, but last week, Carolina receivers had 8 drops in the game, the second most by any team in a game this season. So they're not really helping their quarterback out much. I think they're going to get back on track. I trust Matt Rule more than I do Joe Judge, but I could see it either way. I'm going to go Panthers -2.5. They really need a win.
Right. Yeah. These are two teams that definitely need this game. So that's what makes it hard.
If you want to be in wild card contention, these are the games you have to win.
Right.
But we'll move on to one of the best games of the week. I believe this might be. No, it's like one of 2 or 3 games where 2 winning teams are going up against each other this week. That's all we really get this week. Cincinnati 4-2, playing probably in their biggest game since a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
at least.
like since back in Andy Dalton, AJ Green days.
AFC North football, I love it. At Baltimore, -6.5. What do you think?
Well, the Ravens defense showed a lot last week. I mean, it was a absolute. I mean, you can say maybe the Chargers offense played bad, and yes, they didn't play up to their standards. They missed on a couple of throws here and there, but overall, about 90% of that game, it was lockdown coverage and really good run defense, and just, I mean, overall, just great defense overall. It was a solid game overall. And then Lamar didn't even have that great of a game. They still won by what, like 25? Like, I mean, this Ravens team is as hot as any team can get right now. And that's what makes this game so hard. That's why the line is where it's at -6.5. But on the other side, this Bengals team is really feisty. It's hard to picture in my mind a scenario where the Bengals aren't able to keep it close unless that Ravens pass rush really puts their foot down and attacks this Bengals offensive line. That's the only way in my mind where the Ravens will keep the Bengals from out of touch. I think because this Bengals team is really solid. They're not like great at any one thing, but they just have solid players all around, and that's what makes them good. Okay, with all that being said, this is really tough, but I'm gonna pick the Bengals to cover, maybe up through the back door, like maybe on some type of like a fourth quarter minor comeback, maybe.
Okay, I could see that.
Yeah.
This is a tough game. I'm really excited I get to watch 2 AFC North teams not named the Steelers play in a really big game. And I know you might say, well, why the hell do you want to see this? Well, the Bengals have been bad for so long. I really like Joe Burrow as a player. And then the Ravens, well, I don't like them. I really respect them. And I love watching Lamar Jackson.
Right.
So this is why I want to watch the game. Here's my philosophy, though. I think I can definitely see a scenario where the Bengals keep this game close, right? Within a touchdown. I can see it. Their offense is great. They have a bunch of weapons. Joe Mixon's playing well. Jamar Chase is awesome. I mean, hell, he might win Offensive Rookie of the Year, or at least he's in that conversation.
Right. He's a front runner.
But yeah, I mean, if you look at what Baltimore does when they're at home, they're 30-8 since the start of the 2019 season. That's the second best record in the league, only behind Green Bay when they play at Lambeau Field. And in that time span, they've outscored their opponents by 461 total points. That's the best in the NFL. And the gap between them and the second best team, which would be the New Orleans Saints, is over 150 points. So they win, and when they win by a lot. And last season, I know this Bengals team has gotten a lot better from last season, mainly this defense, and they've sort of pieced together a competent offensive line, at least so far.
Right.
But last year, They did not fare well against Baltimore. They were outscored by 59 points in their 2 matchups. I think they'll do better this year, but for me, I don't think I worry about a letdown game for the
Right.
Ravens here. That's the thing I worry about. They're coming off really 3 emotional victories, if you think about it, that
Right.
took a lot out of them. They beat down a really good Chargers team last week. The week before, they had to come back in that dramatic comeback against Indianapolis. That's an emotional win. And then the week before that, we all remember the 66-yard field goal. So they've been winning a lot of different ways. And I think that's a difference with this Ravens team this year. They don't have to play from ahead. They can win in a bunch of different ways.
Right.
And I just think Lamar Jackson is playing too good right now to be true. I'm going to pick the Ravens, but I can definitely see a scenario where the Bengals keep it close. Their defense is really good, and I think they're top like 6 or 7 against the run. So
Right.
it's going to be, this is the game I'm watching. This game, and then the next game we're going to talk about are going to be 2 games I'm really watching tomorrow.
Right. And if you're watching this game on Sunday, pay attention to that Jamar Chase, Marlon Humphrey matchup.
Yep.
That's gonna be a great matchup moving forward, like just overall, not just in this game. So
okay, well
pay
we've
attention to that.
already disagreed on 2 games, but I feel like they're like minor disagreements.
Right.
Just
right.
the way that we see the game playing out.
Right.
So our next game is another game between 2 winning teams. The Titans are coming off a huge win on Monday night against the Bills, a game that I really didn't get to watch. I'm sort of mad at myself for not watching it because
Yeah,
it came
I
down.
wasn't able to watch that.
It came down to the wire.
Yeah.
And the Kansas City Chiefs, who seem to have found maybe something in that second half against the Washington football team last week.
Right.
I feel like either way, if you want to make a bet on this game, bet the over. These are 2 pretty bad defenses.
Yeah.
So if you're going to bet something, bet the over in total points. But it's Kansas City -4.5 at Tennessee. So what do you think?
Yeah. You mentioned the Chiefs finding something last week. One interesting thing is they benched Daniel Sorensen. I can't remember the guy they replaced him with, but it turns out they actually had a better player on the roster there in the building. So moving forward, I think that will actually help them a lot because a lot of the big plays they were giving up, it was Daniel Sorensen getting beat. So, but for this game though, it's not going to matter. I mean, it's Derrick Henry. I mean, you could argue from what he's done over the past few years that he's already in the Hall of Fame if he were retired right now. I think you could make that case. I mean, he's that good.
Yeah, if he rushes for when he's on pace to rush for 2,200 plus yards
in back-to-back years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's nuts. So,
and I think, sorry to interrupt you, I think his body is built for another 3-4 years after this. I don't think he's one of those. He's not a regular running back. Like,
yeah, and he's been in the league for a while also. Like he's like normally you see running backs come in the league and the first 3 to 4 years of their career, that's their prime. And then they kind of fall off after that, like kind of what you saw from Zeke. But with Henry, he came in the league. He was on the bench behind DeMarco Murray. And then it kind of took him a little while under that Matt LaFleur offense to get going. And as soon as Vrabel got there, boom, he was unstoppable. And that just like unleashed him. But anyway, that's a little off topic. But my outlook on this game is this. In a game where 2 teams aren't going to be stopping each other, the turnovers are going to be huge. If Kansas City keeps making the mistakes they're making, the small interceptions, the fumbles, the drop passes on 3rd down, little things like that, then I think Tennessee will cover. But I also think at the same time, this might be the point in the season where this Chiefs offense starts to explode. And that's what I'm actually going to bet on. I'm going to bet on the Chiefs covering here. Not by much though. I do think the Titans will play a close game for most of it. But I just think this Chiefs team is looking to turn the corner here. And also, I just think that Titans team just happened to match up really well with that Bills team. They've always played that Bills team really well for one reason or another.
I think you hit on a lot of good points. Kansas City -4.5 on the road, played fantastic in that second half last week in Washington. Look, both offenses are capable of scoring 30 plus on any given Sunday. You mentioned the Chiefs offense and their struggles. Well, they've only punted 10 times this entire season. They're moving the ball. It's just these weird turnovers.
Right.
And they have, they're leading the league in turnovers, I believe. That's really been the problem, whether it's a freak turnover here and there or bad decision
like
occasionally.
A pass pounces off of Tyreek Hill.
Exactly. Yeah. Just bad breaks here and there. If those start going their way and they can eliminate those, I think they should win this game by a touchdown or so. But when you look at Tennessee, I just want to read these stats for a minute. I think our audience should hear these stats because they're just absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
Since 2019, Derrick Henry, 843 carries, 196 more than any other player in the NFL. That shows he's durable and he doesn't get hurt. 4,000.
Knock on wood. Sorry.
Well, knock on wood, but we're talking about what's happened.
Right.
4,350 yards, 1,266 more than any other player. 43 rushing touchdowns, 12 more than any other player. So he leads all these categories, and it's not even close. This season, he's averaging 130 yards per game, which would be a career high for him, and he already has 10 touchdowns. A little history lesson here. LaDainian Tomlinson in 2008 holds the single-season rushing touchdown record with 28, and that was in a 16-game season. Well, this year, Henry already has 10 through 6 games, has 11 more games,
right?
And he could be in that ballpark. So, right. But for this game, I mean, Tennessee, they're going to have to get one of those turnovers, I think.
Right.
And I'm not sure they do. I'm going to agree with you. I think Kansas City wins by 6 or 7 points.
Right. And one thing I will say about Tennessee, if you're a Tennessee fan, this is what you'll hang your hat on defensively, is the fact that your safeties, you have one of the best safety duos in the league. The big key with that is we've seen this year that if you have 2 safeties deep against Kansas City and you make them drive down the field in a methodical way,
that's the
10, 11 plays,
that's the formula.
Force them to execute, then maybe you can just wait on making a mistake. And if Tennessee is able to do that, then my pick is screwed because I'm counting on Kansas City being able to hit on those big plays to Tyreek Hill and to Kelsey.
I think they will. Yeah. I think this is a shootout. I don't see any way it's not. But who knows? It might be a get-right game for one of these defenses. We'll see.
Exactly.
We'll see. So moving on, our next game, New York Jets at New England Patriots, who are actually, I think, 0-3 or 0-4. They're winless at home this season, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
But they get to play the Jets, who they blew out early in the season, -7.5.
Yeah, this one is tough because you look at it on one end and you're like, okay, Bill Belichick is incredible against rookie quarterbacks. But you look at the other side And you know that Davis Mills was able to break them apart a few weeks ago. And also, the New York Jets are also coming off a bye week.
They are.
So I actually, like, compared to years past with this Jets team, I trust that coaching staff that's there this year. So I think if there were any week where a rookie was able to actually have a decent game against the Patriots, it would be this week, because they're coming off a bye. Zach Wilson actually showed some good things against the Falcons. It wasn't great. And also his teammates didn't play great either, but he showed signs. And then maybe coming off a bye week, he comes back a little bit sharper, gets through his progressions a little better. That's the hope. So I think I'm going to pick the Jets to cover. I might regret this. I'm going to pick the Jets to cover. But I think that I got to pick at least a few upsets this week, because there's a lot of huge lines. I think this is going to be one of them.
Okay. I can see it. I mean, look, the Jets, they're 1-4. They're coming off a bye week. New England is coming off another emotional loss to your Dallas Cowboys. Oh, man, I think that's the game of the year so far.
Right.
If I had to pick one, that's probably it.
Yeah, that one or Chargers Browns.
Yeah, one of the two. But this is tough. I mean, New England, when they met in week 2 at MetLife, they beat them down 25-6, but that was Zach Wilson's first time seeing Belichick. Now he gets game film. He gets a whole extra week to prepare. That's got to help at least a little bit, even if he doesn't play perfect. He's going to play better, you'd have to think. But I feel like if this was -6.5, like if I got another point, I'd pick New England.
Right. I agree.
But I just think give Mac Jones credit. He's played well as you kind of would expect he would this early in his career. I still don't think New England's dynamic enough offensively to get those cheap plays. I mean, you look at all the great teams right now in the NFL, and they're able to get those cheap drives, those 1 or 2 play touchdown drives, those big plays over the top. I don't think the Patriots have that ability yet. They don't have that. They don't have those weapons yet. So it's got to be a methodical game, ball control game, turnover game, like it has been so far for the Patriots. And look, they've played well against some really good teams. I mean, they hung with the Buccaneers. They hung with the Cowboys. They've played well, and they've hung around with some of these really good teams despite not having that dynamic aspect, and that does give me a little bit of worry. They've lost all their games at home. I feel like this could be one of those games where they just, I don't know.
Smack them early.
Yeah, it could be one of those games. But I'm going to pick the Jets. I don't love it, but I think the Jets will be ready.
Right. I don't love it either. But, yeah, I just think in this scenario, it warrants it.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on here. This is an interesting game. This is kind of a sleeper game that might be kind of interesting if things turn out right.
Yeah, this is another pretty interesting game.
So Washington football team at Green Bay. So Washington, their defensive line has not been up to what we thought it would be. Obviously, their defense overall isn't what we thought, but really it's the defensive line, because that defensive line was supposed to set the tone for everything that happened on that defense. Nobody was expecting that secondary to be world beaters. So if you look at it from this perspective, like if that trend continues and you're giving Aaron Rodgers 5 seconds in the pocket to read your defense, he's going to pick you apart. So I think this might be, I think it could go one of 2 ways. Either that Washington pass rush gets back to the form they were at last year, or the Packers just smoke them. And ultimately, that's what I'm going to go with. I think the Packers will get the job done this week. Their defense has actually been playing pretty decent football. In most metrics, they're actually right around top 10, like 10, 11 range. So I feel pretty comfortable picking the Packers to blow the football team out of the water here. Just considering that the football team is still a little bit limited offensively outside of Terry McLaurin.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just smirking because I typed in Green Bay pickers because we're picking games.
Yeah, I thought it was because I almost said
no.
the other name for the football
Well,
team.
anyways, I agree with you. I mentioned earlier the Packers NFL best 31-7 overall and 16-2 at home during the regular season since 2019. They're playing well. They're winning games. And I still don't think they've had one of those games where they just absolutely throttle someone.
Right.
I think they're due for one of those games.
Yeah.
They're an NFL best also 25-13 against the spread since the start of the 2019 season. So that matters too. Look, there's always a chance Washington can force a couple turnovers or a special teams play that allows Washington to cover. But I just don't see it. I think the Packers are going to have one of those games. They're at Lambeau. They've only lost 2 games at Lambeau in practically 2.5 years. So I just don't see it. I think Washington's limited with what they can do offensively. There's been talk, about Taylor Heineke and his play the past couple of weeks. Washington's 2-4, and they have a minus 50 point differential. So that shows they're a bad team. They're getting blown out a lot of times, or they're not really keeping games close. At least 3rd worst point differential in the entire conference. Yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers at home is going to get good protection.
Get it done. Right.
He's going to get it done.
And one thing I will say about the Packers before we move on is, everybody likes to talk about this Packers team and what they don't do, but nobody talks about what they do at an elite level.
Right.
Their offense, they're one of the most balanced offenses in the NFL with Aaron Jones and what's his name? Their running back out of Boston College, the bruising back that they have as a backup.
AJ Dillon.
AJ Dillon, right? Exactly. With those 2 backs, and obviously Aaron Jones playing at the elite level that he's playing at right now. They're one of the most balanced teams in the league, and I think that's. I think right now they're just kind of cruising, but I think come November, December, they're going to hit their stride because of that style of play. Right. So don't sleep on the Packers, guys. Everybody wants to talk about that New Orleans game, but that might just be a thing in the past now.
Right.
So moving on here. Our next game. Oh, it's the Lions at Los Angeles. Oof. Okay. Lions favorite. Rams favorite. minus 14.5. Wow.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
Look, this is so hard, man. Yeah. Right now, first of all, Detroit's 0-6. First time they were 0-6 since 2008, where they went 0-16. Just putting that out there. Jared Goff still hasn't won a game without Sean McVay in his entire life.
In his NFL career.
NFL career. Right. Right now, they have an 87% chance of landing a top 5 pick and a 36% chance of landing the number 1 overall pick. Probably going to improve here in the next couple of weeks. Sorry to say it, Detroit fans. Look, on paper, you say the Rams cover, but there's so many big lines this week, and I know this is a horrible reason, but there's so many big lines. I feel like if there is going to be an underdog, a big underdog to cover the spread in one of these games, I feel like Detroit is the best setup to do so. They're physical, they can run the ball, and they've had back-to-back stinkers offensively. I think they can get a little bit going here, or at least do a little better. I'm going to pick the Lions plus 14.5, but look, I've picked the Lions a lot this season. Sometimes it's worked, more times than not it hasn't. This could be one I come back and change later, but I feel like if there's one big underdog, the Texans and the Bears really being the others, I mean, this is probably the one. Detroit has shown that it can hang with. But I do worry because it is on the road.
Right. And, I agree with, based on what we have seen, that Detroit, they have been very scrappy so far this season, and they've snuck up on people a little bit. But I think that scrappiness and that fight might wear off as these losses start adding up. I think we've started to see, especially with this last week where they got absolutely smacked, that scrappiness is starting to fade a little bit, and they're like, oh my goodness, we're on 6. It's once they go down by 10, it's we're done. And also, it's clear to me that they don't believe in their quarterback, and that's huge. That's a huge factor. The comments that Dan Campbell has made, and just the overall morale of the team is dropping drastically. And I'm not going to overthink this. I'm just going to go with the Rams, and just, we'll see what happens. But I'm just going to go with the Rams.
I could definitely come back and change that at the end of the episode. But moving on to the late window, Philadelphia at Las Vegas minus 2.5. This is sort of an interesting game. I mean, I know the Eagles aren't great. The Raiders are playing in their second game without John Gruden. Last week went fairly well,
right,
as well as you could have thought. I mean, they got a big win in Denver. I think it really comes down to, will the Raiders hit on explosive plays, and can they protect Derek Carr? We know the Eagles are pretty good in the trenches, both on the offensive line and defensive line. I should add, they're getting Lane Johnson back this week. So that should help them on the offensive line. Sure. And we know their defensive line has been stout the past couple years. They rank 4th in pass rush win rate. The Raiders offensive line ranks 23rd in pass block win rate, so they might have an advantage there. But I mentioned the explosive plays for the Raiders. They produced 34 plays of 20-plus yards so far this season. That's second, tied for the most in the NFL. The Eagles, however, defensively, they pride themselves on not giving up those explosive plays. They've only given up 15 plays of 20-plus yards this season, second fewest in the league. So I think it really comes down to that. I'm getting a Raiders team at home. It feels like all the bad energy is out. I know the Eagles are pesky, but I think the Raiders are going to cover here. You're only asking 2.5 points. I think that's a doable task for them.
Right. I agree. I'm right there with you. I'm picking the Raiders. But it's not exactly for the same reasons. It's more to me about Jalen Hurts' ability to throw people open and also make the throws in the tight windows. He showed flashes early this season of him being able to stay in the pocket, go through his reads, not panic and run outside too early. But he's kind of reverted back to what he's more comfortable with, which is running around, which is hurt this offense because at some point you got to have some structure, and he's struggling to play within the structure. So I think the Raiders will come in with a game plan to maybe have a spy out there for Jalen Hurts. And then once you do that, as long as you stop the broken plays, like the kind of scramble drill type of plays, then this Eagles offense is not too hard to stop, to be fair. It's because they don't have a running game. They struggle in every other aspect of offensively. So as long as you stop those plays, the Raiders will run away with this one.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, Chicago at Tampa Bay, -12.5.
Yeah, I don't know. This is so tough because part of me feels like Justin Fields is due to have a game. Like we're waiting on Justin Fields to be like, okay, he's arrived. But I don't think this is the one. I just think the Bucs, their offense has been so potent. And I think we talked about this early in the year with the Bears. Their cornerback depth is not very good. And I think this Bucs wide receiving group and the fact that they have a great offensive line is going to be good enough to expose that. So I just don't think these teams match up with each other well because the Bears, they pride themselves on, we're going to keep you from scoring over 20 and we're going to score 20. Basically, that's how they win games. And that's just not going to work against the Bucs.
I agree with you. Really nothing to add. Just for historical perspective, Tom Brady's teams 41-33, a 55% winning percentage against the spread, which is pretty damn good when they're favored by 10 or more points. It's better than a whole lot of other quarterbacks.
Right.
Look, Tampa Bay, they absolutely toyed with the Eagles a couple weeks or last week. I think, look, they're working on extra rest after a Thursday night game, and they're playing at home with all those offensive weapons. I know the Bears have looked good the past couple weeks, even though in some losses, but I think I'm going to take Tampa Bay.
Right.
Win by 2 touchdowns.
Right. And the Bears are not going to be able to run the ball against the Bucs. That's another thing.
They're great. They're a great run defense team.
Right. They're historically good against the run. So that's a big factor as well. So moving on to our third to last game. It's Houston at Arizona. Our biggest line of the week, -16.5 for Arizona. Just insane. But the thing is, though, like, they're right. Like, it's gonna be right around that. Because I don't see the Texans being able to score more than like 17 best case scenario. So I mean, you already know the Cardinals are going to score around 30, so it's going to be around that. So yeah, this is tough. I'm just going to have to go with the Cardinals because just the matchup is just, it just lends itself to that. Like I can't bring myself to pick the Texans in this game just because their roster is just not good enough. That's simply all it is.
The Texans won their first game of the season. We're like, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
But that was with Tyrod Taylor.
Right.
And really, I mean, week 1 matters, but it does, like, the things that happen in week 1 don't matter.
Right.
The results matter, but the things that happen in week 1 really don't matter.
Right.
I mean, Pittsburgh beat Buffalo on the road in week 1. You think that happens today? Like, hell no. Yeah. We saw a lot of weird things week 1. The point is, the Cardinals, they've proven time and time again, we've been waiting for the letdown the past couple of weeks, and it hasn't happened yet. Right. They played a really good Cleveland team. A Cleveland team a lot of people still think is going to make the playoffs. Probably not going to win the division. Baltimore, I think, is just too good. But right. And they have a lot of injuries right now. But that Cleveland team, they have one of the best rosters, top to bottom, in the entire league. And
They tore them apart.
They have a good backup quarterback, Case Keenum, a guy who's been there, done that. And the Cardinals went to Cleveland without their head coach, without Chandler Jones, and without Rodney Hudson, their center, and absolutely blew them off the field. If it wasn't for a Hail Mary, that game, the Cardinals win that game by 30 points.
Right.
On the road. So, look, they're 5-1 against the spread this year. They've been great with or without different players, with or without their head coach. They're playing an awful team in the Texans, who've been blown out time and time again the past couple of weeks. Take the Cardinals minus 16.5.
Right. And just to play devil's advocate here, like the other people would say, like, but look at what happened in that Jaguars game. The Jaguars kept it close. But number one, the Cardinals are a different team now. They're more confident. They know who they are.
Yes.
And also, number two, the Jaguars are far more capable than what the Houston Texans are right now. So 100% have to pick Arizona.
I think you got to give general manager Steve Keim a lot of credit.
Yeah.
He didn't really target one specific skill set or position group this offseason. What he did was, last year, this was a young team, very young, not a whole lot of experience, and that showed up late in the season.
Right.
What Steve Keim did is he went out and he got veterans, leadership at every position group. Rodney Hudson, he's a veteran for that offensive line. J.J. Watt, people scoffed at the contract. He's aging a little bit. He's on the, you could say, he's still playing really well, but he's on the
wrong side of 30.
Yes. And he's coming down to the wire here in terms of how much longer he'll be able to play. But he's a leader for that defense. And then you think about AJ Green. Say what you want about his game, but he's a guy who's been in the playoffs. He's been in these different big spots, big games.
Right.
And he can be a leader for that young receiving core.
Right. And even if he were to get hurt, like, he'd still be in that locker room.
Right.
He'd be a presence, a respected presence.
And they probably wouldn't have him if Larry Fitzgerald were still
there.
But give Steve Keim credit. I think that veteran leadership is really paying dividends for Arizona. And you can tell.
Yeah.
You can definitely tell.
100%. Yeah. Some of it is Kyler's improvement, but also it's definitely there. They know how to win.
Right.
And also you have to look at their draft picks as well. The first two picks, those could not have turned out better so far. Rondale Moore and Zaven Collins have been fantastic. So yeah, Steve Keim, he's
a really good general manager. Yeah. I should say that.
And you know what's crazy? Like, the last few years, a different NFC West team has been the last undefeated team. I think 2018 it was the Seahawks, and 2019 it was the Niners. They went to the Super Bowl.
Well, last year it was the Steelers. But
okay, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't. The stat was not the last undefeated team, but I think it was that they've started 4-0.
Yeah.
They've had a team that started 4-0 in the NFC West the last 4 years. That's what I meant. But yeah, still.
They've definitely been the last undefeated team in the NFC.
Right.
And look,
right.
we all expected this division to be some gauntlet of a division. But really, when you look at it, it's really it's turning into a 2-horse race right now. Right. We're about to talk about San Francisco, and they can get back to 500 if they beat Indianapolis. And it's really, I think, kind of their season. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the Rams and the Cardinals look like far and away the two best teams in that division. Until San Francisco shows otherwise, that's what we all believe. Seattle's really, they don't really look like a team that's going to be in the playoffs. You can't count them out yet, but that's just where things stand right now. So we thought we were going to get possibly a 4-team super division, but it's really not turned out to be that way.
Right,
so
exactly.
Far.
Yeah.
But okay, our last 2 games of the week, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
Right.
Indianapolis at San Francisco. It's a Sunday night game. Jimmy Garoppolo comes back for the Niners. And the Colts, really a desperation game, another desperation game. They get back Quentin Nelson on that offensive line.
Right.
So what do you think? It's -3.5 San Francisco.
Yeah, I think this game is going to be close no matter what. I mean, no matter how you slice it, I think despite their records being a little bit different, I think these teams actually are kind of around the same in terms of talent, up and down the roster. Obviously, given that San Francisco has had the injuries that they've had. But still, right now, they're about the same in terms of talent. I think it's just going to, like, in terms of who wins the game, I think it just comes down to which quarterback makes the big play down the field, because these are two defenses that they don't budge much. Like, you're going to have to get that big splash play to get things going.
Right.
So I think I'm going to pick the Colts to cover.
I agree with you.
But
your point.
Yeah, Carson Wentz is going to have to, number one, not turn the ball over. But number two, he needs to make sure he hits on those deep balls when they're there, because you see a lot of times he overthinks things when he looks down the field. He'll look at it and then he'll check it down or something like that. But he has to hit on that deep ball when it's there this game if they're gonna get it done.
Right. Yeah, I was originally going to pick San Francisco, but you think about it. Sure, Jimmy Garoppolo is coming back from injury, but what is he going to look like? I don't know. I can't trust 100% that he's going to look like himself. Look, the 49ers are coming off their bye week. They're trying to snap a 3-game losing streak that they had going into their bye week. They have a good coach and a great coach in Kyle Shanahan. They are missing George Kittle. He's still on injured reserve. It's impossible to know how limited Jimmy Garoppolo may or might not be. I think DeForest Buckner going up against his former team, that interior offensive line against the Colts defensive line. They're getting Darius Leonard back. Jonathan Taylor has been a beast offensively. He's a guy you can lean on. He's 5th among running backs in rushing yards, and he's also 5th in yards per carry. So I think they're going to lean on Jonathan Taylor. And look, say what you want about Carson Wentz, but he's played really well the past couple weeks.
Yeah.
And I think seeing that, I trust him more than I do Jimmy Garoppolo right now, because I just haven't seen it.
Right. And just even if with the eye test, even without the numbers, he looks more confident. Something is different this season.
Yes.
His mechanics look better. His accuracy looks better. And he's also he's playing within structure, and he's not trying to be a hero. That's the biggest thing. But yeah.
And look, maybe that Frank Reich, Carson Wentz connection is starting to rekindle a little bit. Maybe the Colts can make a run here, but they have to win this game.
Right.
They have to. Okay, last game of the week, and then we can decide on our locks and make any changes. Seattle's desperate. They hung around in Pittsburgh last week, but they're 2-4, and I don't think they can drop to 2-5. They're hosting the Saints. -5.5, coming off a bye, I believe.
Right.
So what do you see here? Monday Night Football.
I'm going to pick Seattle to cover. I think New Orleans and Pittsburgh are comparable in a lot of ways. The one big difference, though, is that New Orleans has a much better offensive line. That's the one big key. But overall, though, I do think they match up in similar ways. I liked what they saw in the second half from Seattle in terms of getting that running game going. If they could keep that up, especially with the home crowd behind them. I think they keep it close. And also, who is Seattle without them giving their fans a heart attack every game? Like that's their thing. Like that they like that. That they just
look, a veteran
they're
coach.
always in a close game.
Veteran coach. I think Geno Smith is pretty decent. I mean, he fumbled in overtime, but other than that, he played really well in that game.
I agree. Yeah.
And look, what are you gonna do? It's TJ Watt. What are you gonna do? I mean, that's what he does. It's funny because, and I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but since we have a little time, earlier in that game, he was punching. It looked like he was punching. Punching Alex Collins, and some people say that he should have been, thrown out for that. So there's that too. But he made up for it. That happens pretty much every other week. With TJ Watt, he leads the NFL in forced fumbles since he came into the league. But anyways, I think you can trust Geno Smith to at least keep this game close. We saw it last week. He's playing at home, his first start at home. The Saints are 3-2 coming off their bye. I like the Saints, I think, but I also don't know what to think of them. And I think Seattle needs this game a little more. And I know we keep saying that, and sometimes it doesn't matter, but I do think you're playing in front of your home fans, the 12s, and you need to win.
Right.
I think we see a big play from DK Metcalf in this game. Probably another. They're going to need the big plays.
Right.
They're going to need those.
Right. And
because the Saints defense it's a good defense.
Right.
You got to stretch the field.
Yeah. And I also worry about that Saints pass rush as well. Marcus Davenport has looked a lot better this year. And also obviously Cameron Jordan on the other side. I mean, that pass rush is always lurking in these types of primetime games. So if Geno Smith can just continue to do what he's doing, just manage the game and not turn the ball over. We know Pete Carroll is very comfortable in these low scoring type of games. So
right.
I trust that they can keep it close.
Right. And they're getting, 5.5 points at home.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's big to me.
So those are our picks. First of all, what are our locks? We need to decide on our locks. This is hard. I had my eye on that Raiders game, -2.5. It's not a huge line that they have to cover. I think I might go with that.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick for sure.
I'm gonna go with that. I'm just gonna go with it.
For me, I'm gonna go with the Packers.
Okay.
I might regret that. I'm kind of between that game and the Rams game because I'm trying not to overthink it because these are two teams that are elite. But I also got to choose wisely because if this lock doesn't hit, then I can't choose the Packers for 2 weeks. So that's a big part in it as well.
So last week, I think, I was one game better than you last week, but that's because your Tampa Bay Thursday night block barely didn't cover.
Right, that was a bad beat.
My Cowboys, or your Cowboys, I picked them for my lock. They did end up covering in overtime with that CeeDee Lamb touchdown. So it was a weird week. But look, I really like Green Bay and I really like Las Vegas. I feel like those two are. I have the most conviction about those games. I think.
Right.
Anything you want to change?
No, I think I feel pretty comfortable with these picks.
I do too. I think 2 games that I would look at possibly, are not going to change ultimately because it would be the Detroit pick. But I'm just going to hope and pray that they can somehow maybe a backdoor cover late or something like
Jared
that.
Goff revenge game?
Yeah.
Question mark.
Hopefully, just keep it within 2 touchdowns. I'm hoping. And then I still have like this vision where the Ravens have a letdown, but I don't think they will. I'm gonna keep that. I'm gonna keep it that.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna change anything, I don't think.
All right then. Perfect. That's gonna do it for us, guys. That was episode 80.
In person?
Yep, for the first time in a long time. Hope you all enjoyed. We probably won't be back like this for a while. Most likely December break we will, but before that, it's kind of dicey.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for obviously Michael Spurs episode Monday and also our episode Wednesday, because we're going to talk MVP stuff Wednesday. And we might talk some basketball as well, throwing in there. So stay tuned for all that. And yeah, peace out, guys.
Peace out.